think one of the smartest things I did when I started doing these drawings is that I took the advice of someone online that I greatly admire about drawing at the exact size of your reference. It makes such a huge difference to do this. And okay, sorry. Temporarily interrupted by my phone. I'm just going to turn that off. Anyway, the measuring, I think it's just such a simple thing. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And it really does speed your drawing up. Because when you want to make sure you're, at about the right size, all you have to do is do a quick, measurement like that using your pencil and your thumb. And then eventually when you, just get better and better, you won't have to measure as much. You can trust your eye. So I'd love to know in the comments if you prefer to hear me talking while I'm doing this, or if it's just kind of relaxing to, watch someone draw without a lot of yapping. I think too there's only so much talking I can do, because when I do relax into the drawing and start concentrating, I typically can't concentrate on my words. So kind of like right now. So that will be something that kind of comes and goes along with my concentration. But you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just throwing in some very simple folds of the cloths. And it's really more about getting the value right, where it gets darker and disappears versus where it's, quite bright, like this section of cloth right here. And, when we're talking about folds of cloth, I don't really worry about getting each one exactly right. It's quite different when you're, drawing a figure, where if you don't get it right, it's going to look awkward. As humans, we can recognize when something's a little bit off on a drawing of a person. We can recognize that instantly. And I think when it comes to inanimate objects, we're a lot more forgiving with our eye. We haven't looked at them enough. We don't exactly know the object that's being drawn and what to compare it to. Of course, you all know what I'm drawing because it's right here. So it's fun, as I'm doing this, I'm kind of peeking in the camera and I'm watching, and there's a strange sensation that I'm watching somebody else draw when I do it, and it kind of screws me up a little bit. So I'll have to remind myself not to do that. But right here is a real, value issue here. I think it's going to have to get much, much darker to really set this hand apart from the figure. So that's what I'm doing right here. And I don't think I left quite as much space as I should have over here. But that's okay. It's just the proximity of her hand to the body. It's not actually a wrong measurement of a piece of the body, which would create an awkward look. So, this one was very close to being done when I started this shot. I'm really just experimenting. I had to set up the camera in the car, and hoping that some of my coworkers don't happen by. I'm doing this before I start work each day. Just try to do maybe a 10-minute video or a 20-minute video. And now I'm just, trying to get the values. You see how dark it is under the breast and in between the arm and the body, and I definitely have not captured that. So I'm trying to get in there and really push those darks to a better match to what I'm seeing here with the sculpture. I do love to draw from sculptures because in the end the drawing can still feel somewhat original, as opposed to copying, a drawing, which it's a great exercise and I do it all the time, but in the end you copy a Michelangelo drawing and you're going to be disappointed at your result. But if you actually work from a different medium like sculpture to drawing, I think you can actually be quite pleased with your result, because it does feel like it's a little bit yours. I use a lot of this cross-hatching too. Let me see if I can get in here a little closer for you to see. I just think it makes for a dramatic picture, and a lot of times what I'll do is when I feel like I need a little interest in an area of the photograph, in an area of the drawing, I'll throw some cross-hatching in just to make the background look interesting. It's also a great way to practice your control of the pencil. And what I usually do is I'm only looking here where it's meeting the body, and I'm trusting that the flick of my hand will stop where it needs to stop. And in this case I had the gutter of the page there, but I feel like it adds something to the drawing. It adds an interest. It says, hey, I'm considering the space around the drawing as opposed to just being within the drawing and not really considering the page, although I do that a lot of times as well. So I'm going to pull back a little bit so you can see all of it. And right now I'm looking at how much darker this area of the sculpture is compared to this area of my drawing. And since that's the area that is really coming forward to the viewer, I want to make sure I really get that value right. It's funny, I can hear car beeping, people locking their cars and heading into work, and at some point if I keep doing this someone's gonna knock on my window to say, what the heck are you doing? It'll be funny when that happens. Not. Anyway. So I'm really trying to bring this piece forward. I try to kind of follow the same rules that a painter would follow, and that when you're dealing with the edges of your drawings, you don't want to pull the eye out of the drawing too much. So even though it's quite dark in here where the leg is, and should be quite dark here where this leg is in the drawing, I'm not going to go super dark to the edge. I'm going to go that's about it. But I feel a little safer about getting darker here, because it'll pull you in to the drawing. I also want to make sure I'm really being true to the shadow here and making sure I capture this. One little trick that I do a lot is whenever I'm coming to the edge of the human form, it's really a good thing to remember to put the shadow in, but don't go all the way to the edge. I really feel like it makes a big difference to do that, and you'll see that I do it here. I try to do it almost on every edge, and especially if I don't have a master drawing to really guide me. I just threw a little more light on the subject here. I have to use that as just a great, I won't say a trick, but a great trick to make the drawing look realistic as the shadows are coming around the forms. I'm seeing here that this is a really, really dark area, and I probably missed that in my early part of the sketch, so I'm going to throw that in. And that may really help to pop this knee up. But what I don't want to do is make the shadow more important than the figure. So that means that I then have to darken this part. trusty clamp here, which I showed on my first video of my setup. Just a couple of simple tools. Makes a big difference if you don't have to hold your book completely. I think the most complicated thing here is my camera setup with my iPhone. I'm just using an iPhone 6, and has a pretty good camera. Good enough, certainly. I know I watch other people's videos, and I'm honestly not, I don't critique their camera work. I mean, that's not what I'm there to see. So I'm trying not to stress over the fact that it could be better, my setup. I have a GoPro that I was hoping to warm up to. I find it really complicated to use, and it runs out of juice pretty quick. And I got really frustrated with it because I didn't know it had run out of juice, and I was shooting my whole video of me painting, and I ended up getting nothing. That's no fun. So I think this in here is the last part that I probably really need to resolve, but I want to make sure I connect these parts of the body that look a little bit disconnected now. I feel like it needs an overall tone here. It would never sink just to white, and I think when you learn to step back and really look at the value or the darkness and lightness of your drawing, that's when you can really correct some mistakes. Again, I don't want to focus too much on one particular body part. It's really important to make sure you kind of travel around the drawing and really focus evenly on the drawing. I think that really popped the leg out kind of nice, but I think what has to happen now is I've really got to look at how dark this would be close to the leg. And I think, I very rarely bother to erase because I feel like it's probably close enough for a study, but I do see that I screwed up that line, and that this line right here is actually a little farther down on the leg. So I'm going to be true to that because that is a line that could look awkward. I'm just using a kneaded eraser. It's very protective of the paper. It's a great tool. So I'm looking at this line and I'm going, okay, here's the dent with the knee, and it goes down about that much. So here's the dent with the knee, and it probably needs to go down about that much. So I was a little off with my first line. You wouldn't think that would make much of a difference, but it truly does. I just saw someone walk by my car. Security, some weirdo filming a video in the garage, parking garage. It's kind of nice. I'm getting a little bit of a dappling light going on over here on this side of the camera. I just don't want to pull back too far because I do notice when I watch other videos on YouTube, if it's back too far, I get really frustrated that I can't see everything that's going on. So now I'm just kind of coaxing this leg out of the view in the drawing, but I've got some awkward lines here that I want to resolve. I'm probably going to do what I said I wasn't going to do, which is get this very dark and leading out of the picture. But I think I kind of have to here, feeling like it needs to be a little darker overall. Sometimes I'll do a cross-hatching just when I'm interested in getting it darker, and I'm not really dictating, doesn't really need to dictate the form that I'm drawing. I feel like the form's there, I just feel like the value's off. I'm trying to figure out also, how long these videos should be. feel like 10-15 minutes is a great length, mainly because it takes a long time for me to upload it, and the attention span, from what I've been reading, of most people watching videos is pretty short. Although I am not that way when I watch other people's work. I could watch a real-time video for an hour or two and not even think twice about it, but I think that's probably not the norm, and I want to make sure I'm creating content that most people would sit through. So again, I'm just really concerned about values now. And the body is so complicated, and you could see this beautiful sculpture, Michelangelo sculpture, that it's just a lot going on here that, I'm not really capturing with the pencil, but I think that I have to be careful. It may work in the sculpted form, but in a pencil drawing, if you don't simplify it a little bit, it could end up looking really fractured. Don't be intimidated copying a master drawing, though. I mean, in the end, obviously, it's not going to look exactly how the master did it, but think of it as training wheels. You're working from an image that somebody who's amazing has already figured out for you so much of the interpretation of the figure to a piece of art. So they've already flattened out, if you're drawing from a drawing, they've already flattened out the drawing and figured out how to turn a 3D object into a 2D object for you. And all you have to do is just sort of follow their rules. And I gotta say, the times where I felt like I learned the most in art school was really when I was doing copies of master drawings. And it occurred to me just a few years ago that, wow, if I look back on my art school years, which at RISD was many, many, many years ago, I graduated in the class of 88, so back in the disco days. I really felt like, wow, that's when I really was doing so much of my learning, and I also just loved the historical, the master drawings. I just absolutely loved them. So it just occurred to me, not too long ago, that maybe I should do some more of that, get myself back into it. And I'm glad I did. It's really influenced my painting too. I think you can never have too much drawing time. I also really have to credit watching YouTube, some folks on YouTube that have just so kindly shared, their thoughts and their teaching and things they've learned with an audience they don't even see. And I was really inspired by that. And I thought, well, maybe I could, just share some things that I've learned, and maybe someone out there will be interested to know. And maybe it'll make them decide to take up artwork again, or maybe for the first time in their lives. So that's why I'm here in the car, talking to you all, whoever you all is. Again, if you want to see more videos, I would appreciate it if you could like and hit the subscribe button on YouTube, not just on my Facebook page where I'm promoting the YouTube channel, but it just helps me to know if there's anybody out there watching, and if it's worth the time to do it. There's also a little bell button. It's shaped like a bell, and if you hit that button, you'll get a notification whenever I put up a new video, just so you don't miss anything. Again, thanks for joining me, and I don't know, I may tweak this one at some point. a little more, but I feel like I'm getting near the end of this sketch. I don't want to overwork the drawing and make it turn very, very dark. I just noticed that the face was just extremely white, and I wanted to correct that. I'm going to remove this little clamp so I can really see the whole drawing. I think that this line could be more pronounced. You see how it's in the darkness there. I'm going to opt to not draw the darkness here though, because I like the idea of having it shaded on one side and not shaded on the other. So, but what I do want to do is get, you know, this area of the forearm a little more pronounced. You see I'm following my rule of putting the shading in but not going all the way to the edge. It really does help to make the form look a little more sculptural. Since I'm drawing from a sculpture, I think that's pretty important to do. So, you know, you don't have to treat every piece of the drawing exactly evenly. I know that was one of the things that I was saying about the values. That's mainly just so your eye doesn't just jump around like crazy and not really pull together the figure, so that the line work all of a sudden is distracting or the darkness is distracting. But you can certainly leave some things, you know, out and really just focus on other areas. That makes for an interesting drawing too. Drawing to call it done. But you know what, the great thing about having your drawings in a little sketchbook is that, you know, at any time you can just kind of pick it up and, you know, start messing with it again. And if you see something after coming back to it that just doesn't look right, or that, you know, is falling apart a little bit, but I think I'm good. So just give you a little close-up of the drawing. Beautiful sculpture that I based the drawing on. And thanks so much for joining me in my car. Hope to see you all again on the next car sketching segment.